Hey everyone, Great Squatch here. Builds for Titans who are new lights. What builds can you do as a Titan who is a new light? I will be showing you in this video with all stuff that you can acquire free to play, like if you're just testing out the game or are pretty new to this, something that you can easily put on and use in most all content in the game. So what is this build? Titans start off on Striker Titan. So you're going to start up this super. I'd say immediately forsake the super because the super's butt. It's getting a buff next season, but I wouldn't count on it. And the cool thing about this is it doesn't rely on any artifact mods, so this will be relevant unless they nerf the crap out of like whatever this build, like what this build does. This doesn't take much thinking. It's all the build plays itself pretty much just in your gameplay. You're going to be taking advantage of it. So first thing you're going to want to get is Thunder Crash. All right, save up enough Glimmer to buy Thunder Crash. I know it's expensive, but Thunder Crash is way better than Fist of Havoc, and it probably always will be unless the buffs are substantial. So get Thunder Crash, which is just one big burst of damage, so there's no like running around in your super. Next, you're gonna want Towering Barricade. I mean, you could use something like Thruster, but I would say Towering Barricade's better. And the reason why I say Towering Barricade's better than something like Rally Barricade is Towering Barricade blocks you from all damage that's going to be coming through your shield, unless the enemy obviously walks through your shield. And remember, this is a PvE build, so Towering Barricade, I mean, even in PvP, you want Towering Barricade, because Rally Barricade does not protect you from all damage sources. It doesn't increase your weapon reload speed and stuff like that, but there's almost no instant. I can't say there's almost no instance where you'd use this. You could use it in like boss damage phases if you need reload speeds, but other than that, Towering Barricade is what you want to do. Like I said, it blocks all damage, gives you a brief window when you can prevent yourself from taking damage, and you can activate mods and stuff with it for free. I use Strafe Lift. Some people use Catapult. I'd say if you want the safe bet, Strafe Lift is probably the best. Catapult gives you a little bit more speed, but it is a shorter jump, so like jumping puzzles might become more difficult if you use it. I use Thunderclap just because it's a safer option, right? You could hit them from a distance. Ballistic Slam's not bad, right? But then you're stuck in the middle of it if you didn't kill all the enemies. And Seismic Strike is good, but with the nerfs to Seismic Strike, I don't think that it's going to be worth running. So, and the main thing for our build is this right here, Pulse Nade, a grenade that periodically damages targets within its explosion radius. You may be like, well, why? Why is this better than all the other ones? Like, you could probably do this build with the Flashbang Nade or Storm Nades, but I think because Storm Nades got nerf pretty hard, and flashbangs, like, unless you're really skilled at frag grenades, is kind of hard to hit, especially on targets that move around a lot. Pulse Nade is just better, and the reason why we're gonna want to run this is because of this aspect, right? If you read down the list, there are silver grenades that take advantage of this aspect, and pulse grenades creates ionic traces periodically as it damages targets and increases in damage over time. So those pulse nades are going to be increasing in damage the longer it stays on a target. This is useful for bosses or chunky enemies, and these ionic traces, they travel along the ground, they seek you, they come towards you, and they give you ability energy when they come to you. So this is useful, and you're going to see why our gun is going to help us with this, so that we're always getting our grenade. Knockout, critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with arc energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short time. This is really useful because, I mean, it kind of is just there because it has 2 fragment slots. You could really use either one of them. The only issue with Juggernaut is that you're not getting a second fragment slot, which kind of sucks. I know they're buffing this next season, so next season it might be actually useful. When you sprint, after a little bit, you get a frontal shield that blocks damage. It could be useful, but I say use Knockout just because you get 2 fragment slots, and there's really no downsides to having this. There are downsides to Juggernaut, like if your frontal shield breaks, then you lose your barricade, and you don't gain the benefits from just popping your barricade. So I'd say get Knockout and Touch of Thunder. We'll start out with why. This is Spark of Shock. Your arc grenades jolt targets. Now this is a -10 discipline, but you're gonna see why you want to jolt targets. And jolt is just, it arcs lightning to other targets in the vicinity of it. So essentially, if you hit a target with your pulse nade, it's going to arc further and it's going to deal more damage. So you're not so worried about where these land. You want to land it on a target, but it increases the radius of it basically. And then Spark of Ions defeating a jolted target creates an ionic trace. This is what you want to do. You want to create more ionic traces, right? So you have this working with in tandem with your Touch of Thunder aspect, which your pulse nades create ionic traces. You're going to be getting so many of these that you're going to be just regenerating ability energy constantly. You want Spark of Magnitude, your lingering arc nades, and this applies to lightning grenade, pulse nade, and storm nades have increased duration. So your grenades are just going to last longer. And then the final one, I like to use this because of the weapon we're using. Spark of Beacons, while you are amplified, your arc special weapon, final blows create a blinding explosion. So how you become amplified, you can melee something. Melee, it has to die though. So if you melee kill something, you become amplified, or rapidly defeating targets with arc damage makes you amplified. So this is just a bonus thing. And plus blinding also stuns unstops. I wouldn't trust it though, because it requires that you there's enemies around that unstop to kill, and that your teammates won't steal the kill. So we have other ways to deal with unstops. Now for mods, now you might look at my mods and be like, yeah. But I wanted to show you like where they are, how to apply them. You want as much resilience as possible. Resilience is just too good in PvE to not have, right? And you get 30%, and your barricade comes back faster, and you're going to see why you want your barricade in a little bit. I like to have recovery, because when I pop my barricade, I want my health to come back as quickly as possible, right? Because then you still get the 30% damage resistance and your health is back. And the discipline, grenades are too strong to not have your discipline stat really high. So to not take advantage of your discipline stat is kind of, it hurts you. You know, I know if you're new light, maybe the stats, they really don't matter. The main thing that matters is getting your resilience stat up. So if you need to use your the stat slot to get your resilience up, then use it. Resilience over everything else, especially in PvE. PvP it's a little bit different, but PvE you definitely want a high resilience stat. So good old Riptide. This has been in every single build video, but Riptide is too strong. Like, and you can deal with overloads and unstops with this for free. Basically, you just got to make sure Chill Clip is active on your fusion rifle, right? This thing is free to play. You get it from Crucible engrams. It's worth going and getting. Now the mainstay of this build is Cold Heart. Now why would you say Cold Heart? This is a free to play exotic. You can get it. I think it's world drops. If not, it's from the kiosk at the tower, right? So periodically generates ionic traces in its high damage state. So if you're just holding it on a target for a long period of time, right, this weapon shoots a steady cold fusion power arc laser, dealing more damage the longer it remains on the target. So basically it's going to be building up damage the longer you hold on it, and the longer you hold on it, it's going to be creating ionic traces. And remember, these ionic traces give you ability energy when they come to you. And this isn't tied to your class, so there's no cooldown on this. It just happens when it happens. This is why you want all the ionic traces, because it continually builds into your class. And as you'll see from the gameplay, that it gives you a lot of ability energy when you pick up those ionic traces, right? And you don't have to do anything for them. You don't have to run over to the enemy you killed. Those things track to you and come back to you. That's why it is pretty useful. Your masterwork, I have not masterworked this, or I have not got the catalyst finished, but it gives you a bunch of stability and reload speed, which is useful. But another reason why this is good is because of the aspect. This, while you are amplified, your arc special weapon, final blows create a blinding explosion, and as you'll see from the gameplay, it is quite useful, right? Especially when there's lots of enemies. You can kill one, causes a blinding explosion, which blinds all the enemies, and now they're unable to do stuff to you or shoot for a period of time, giving you more time to kill them. So very, very useful. And then I use Chain of Command because this is a free-to-play heavy machine gun. Heavy machine guns are meta unless they get nerfed. So, and this one's useful because you could change it to arc damage with osmosis and how many grenades you're going to be throwing. Like, this thing is useful. And then you have Demolitionist, so you can continually feed into your grenade energy, right? And you might be like looking at this weapon combo and being like, this is double special. Well, double special is really strong, right? You have two specials on, and the more you use them, the more heavy you get. And when you have your heavy out, you're going to be getting more special ammo. So it kind of feeds into itself, right? If you need a nade, you switch to your heavy, get a couple kills with this, it regens your nade, then you get swapped back, you know, or if you need special ammo, you just get a bunch of kills with your heavy, right? Like it feeds into itself. And as you can see from the gameplay, this Chain of Command is actually really good. There are some other arc machine guns out there that you could use, right, that are free to play. the Swarm is definitely a top tier one. I mean, and it's kind of top tier, right? You have to do the Nightfall for this, but it could be good. Could be all right. Like, it doesn't get all that amazing perks, but it's definitely decent. Really, that's the Swarm and Chain of Command really are the only ones I think are accessible free to play. I don't know if this one is accessible free to play, but I wouldn't even worry about this one. This one's kind of bad. So now back to the armor, right? We kind of went over the weapons so that the armor makes more sense, right? You want heavy ammo finder because you want heavy ammo. Your primary is your heavy ammo and your cold heart, and your machine gun is going to be basically generating special ammo for you. You don't need a special ammo finder. I mean, you could put one on if you want one, right? You feel you're not finding enough special ammo, then you could. That's really preference, right? But at least having one assets to assets on as well, because you're going to be getting a lot of grenade kills and you want your super. So having at least one of those. And then I always have fastball on because I feel like, again, you throw like a wimp with no fastball. I think fastball should just be integrated into your like everything. This shouldn't cost anything. A good thing to have would be grenade kickstart. You're just getting free grenade energy back if you're armor charged, which is just picking up orbs. So that leads back into this. You probably want probably a harmonic siphon. So you getting kills with the cold heart or your heavy machine gun. If it's arc, then you're going to be creating orbs, and then the orbs feed into grenade kickstart. So if you throw your grenade, it expends your armor charges, but gives you a good chunk of your grenade energy back, and also your ionic traces are going to be giving you a pretty good portion of your grenade energy back, so it's quite useful, right? And then this other slot, the thing is, like, this might cost more next season, so I wouldn't even count on it, so I might take this off because you don't know. This would be 3 and you have maybe 2 left. You could use something like impact induction, where causing damage with your melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown, so you're getting a shorter cooldown on top of it. Or if you don't have very high discipline, right, you could use your armor charges to give you higher discipline, right, with this font of focus. So when your armor charge, like, while this is active, I'm pretty sure it's like a plus 20 to your stat, right? So I would be at 110, which past 100 doesn't matter, but I'd be at least 100, so I'd be getting the cooldown benefits of having 100 discipline as long as I'm armor charged. Now on the armamentarium is the reason, like, the mainstay of this exotic. You could use Heart of Most Light, but it requires a little bit more finesse with your abilities. This just like, all it does is give you an additional grenade charge, so you're gonna have 2 grenades, which is good because you throw one, it's recharging that one you threw, but now you have a second grenade that you could throw in the meantime, right? So you're kind of always charging your grenade, even if you have one. So there's no reason to not use your grenade. And again, like I said, the only reason I would not recommend Part of a Most Light for newer players is because if you want to turn your brain off and just play, Armamentarium is the way. But Heart of a Most Light has received a hefty nerf that, you know, it requires a little bit of finesse with your abilities to actually get it to work well. So Armamentarium, and I would recommend, just if you want to, you could do something like arc reserves, or if they have, harmonic reserves, because you can increase your reserves of like cold hard ammo or your heavy weapon ammo, and or you could be using like any of these resistance type things. Like if you know you're going into something with high arc damage, well, you're gonna want something with good arc resistance, solar resistance, void resistance, stasis. There's not really a lot of things with stasis. If there's a lot of splash damage and whatever you're doing, you could put concussive dampener on, melee damage resistance. Really, I would just read it, and if there's anything in the whatever you're doing that require, like, there's going to be a lot of those types of damage, then you can put those on. They give you a pretty good amount of damage resistance against those specific types of damage types. So, and you could also run emergency reinforcement, but double dipping into your armor charges might lead you to never having armor charges, so I wouldn't recommend it. And if you can't get to 100 resilience, you could use your armor charges for this. It works the same way as a discipline thing, right? You pick up an orb, and now you get basically a plus 20 to your resilience stat. Now boots, right? I would just go arc weapon surge, and then you could either use intervention or better already, right? Intervention reduces your grenade cooldown every time you pick up an orb, and again, we're going to be creating orbs with kills with our arc weapons. But if you feel like that's not necessary, then you could do better already. Your health immediately begins to regenerate immediately after picking up an orb of power. This might help you with the flow of the build and keeping you up during combat, so that could be really useful. But also sometimes I like to substitute in like our holster mod, because you know, if you're swapping weapons a lot, or you know, just don't want to think about reloading your guns, then you throw this on, because when you swap a weapon, when you go back to that weapon, it'll probably be, if not fully reloaded, it'll be mostly reloaded, so you don't have to worry about swapping to your heavy machine gun and it be halfway reloaded, or the cold heart and it being halfway reloaded. And then on your mark, right, these are the things that you want. Bomber, right? This is the reason why you want your barricade, and probably not jug shield, is because you want to be able to activate your barricade to give you a chunk of your grenade energy back. This actually gives you a pretty decent amount of grenade energy back, so it is kind of worth using. And again, like every build video, I say Reaper is almost necessary until they nerf it or change it, which they probably will, after using your class ability or your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power, and you'll be creating a bunch of orbs. And this, right, like I say in every video, this doesn't have like a timer, so after you pop your class ability, it will just infinitely be on cooldown, or infinitely be ready to use until you get a kill or die. So it is very useful. And as you can see from the gameplay, right, this is a solid build. Like, you're always going to have your pulse nade, you're always getting ionic traces, which regens your pulse nade, right? And people underrate pulse nades, but they're really strong. And especially I think this next season, and Season of the Deep, that's probably going to have some sort of arc mods, which this will probably play into. So, but another thing with this build, people underestimate, but Cold Heart does a lot of damage on its own. You could use this for a boss damage phase, right? If somebody on your team is running Divinity or something, like, it is pretty useful, or you can easily hit the crit, because it does a bunch of damage. I think in day one of Root of Nightmares, I was actually using this for extra damage, because it just does that much. If you can hit the crits. And like I said, all these things are free to play, right? This you get from the exotic kiosk at the tower. So you go here to legacy gear, and then it's right there. Yes, it costs an ascendant shard and an enhancement prism, but if you're really keening on getting this, once you get it, you can just pull it from collections whenever, and it does not cost an ascendant shard. So it would be worth getting. I would say it is a really good machine gun that I think is overlooked. But you know, all these things are free to play. You start out in striker class. The only thing that might cost you anything is buying all these aspects, which are fragments and aspects, which I'm sorry, they cost a lot. I don't get to choose the prices, but like I said, get rid of Fist of Havoc as soon as you can, because it is bad. Now for PvP, right? Weapons kind of don't really matter. You really kind of want to use the shotgun though. You don't have to switch out for arc, but you would want to use a shotgun. You probably don't want armamentarium with what I'm going to say, right? And we'll go into the why right now. You would probably switch this to shoulder charge and then lightning grenade. Now, shoulder charge is subject to change dependent on whether or not the nerf to, I mean, even with the nerf, these other two are kind of bad in Crucible. This one's not bad, but this, I don't, shoulder charge will probably still be what you run. So yeah, running seismic strike, you want towering barricade. Don't be the guy that runs rally barricade. Thruster is also good, but I think barricades are too useful to not use. Like, towering barricades are too useful, they're too strong to not use. So I'd run towering barricade, seismic strike, and then lightning nades. And why lightning nades? You want the touch of thunder. As you can see, it also gives lightning nades a benefit, grants an additional grenade charge, and jolts targets hit by the initial blast. That is one of the main reasons why you'd want to run it. And then I always run knockout, because you critically wound or break their shields. Now you get increased melee range and damage for a short time. The Punch Titan, eating crayons, aping around, like, this is kind of what you want. And this is kind of the reason why I say you want to use shotguns, because even if you don't kill them, if you break their shields, you can follow it up with a melee, and you're almost impossible to hit in that melee because of the game's latency. So yeah, you could run Juggernaut, which is all right, but I think you lose a lot of the power of your towering barricade when you run Juggernaut. Now, what I run is Spark of Instinct. So if somebody is near you and they manage to get a melee off, or they hurt you with a shotgun or a SMG or anything, right, you will jolt them, which in Crucible is a big thing, right? Because they become disrupted by overload with jolt, which means they cannot restore health for a limited amount of time. And if they get shot by like your teammates or you, then it's going to cause damage in an area around you or around them, and it causes a bunch of damage back to the target that is jolted. So it is very useful. You run Spark of Magnitude. This is probably a must-have if you're running any of the nades that are listed under Spark of Magnitude, because it just increases the duration for a good amount of time. And again, the reason why you want to run lightning nades is because they stick to walls and they shoot straight out from walls. They're kind of like trip mines in the fact that you can hit people behind cover if you line it up correctly, right? These are really, really, really strong nades. Just looking, and it's not that hard to think about. Like, you can just use it to block chokes, points of entry. You can hit people behind walls. Like, it is a solid nade to have in the Crucible. And then I have Spark of Resistance. This is a very useful one for Crucible. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. This does apply in Crucible. It's not much, but it might make you survive an extra melee. So very useful. And then Spark of Haste. While you're sprinting, you have increased resilience, recovery, and mobility. So you will be regening your health faster and getting your barricade faster while you are sprinting, which is always useful in Crucible. There's almost never an instance where you're not going to be sprinting at some point in Crucible. So, you know, towering barricade, the Spark of Haste is really useful. Again, you don't have to buy it, but you can. Like I said, the only thing I would say for Arc Titans is probably having a shotgun, some sort of shotgun. It doesn't have to be this shotgun. It could be any shotgun you like to use. And the rest of the weapons are kind of up to you, but Arc Titans with shotguns are too useful, are too strong. So, and then this exotic I think is free to play. It's from world drops, so you can use it. And basically what it does is when you are sliding, after sprinting for a short time, you activate the shield, which makes you invulnerable and reflects all incoming damage. And by reflect, I mean it's going to basically, if you aim it right, it's going to be going directly back at the target that you were looking at. So it's very useful. It's very short though, so you have to time it correctly. And I mean, even if you're not even thinking about it, if you're just aping around, sliding around corners and stuff, it can save you. If you don't want to use that, if you're using like an SMG, Peacekeepers are good because they give you it reloads your stowed submachine guns and allows them to ready instantly, so you get improved handling with your machine gun, improves your handling with your submachine guns and your movement while wielding one. Right, this is like a huge bump in your mobility while holding a submachine gun. And if you're using an SMG, I would recommend this way over Antaeus Ward's, because your movement speed while holding an SMG is kind of insane, and it improves your airborne effectiveness stat, which whatever. But it is too useful to not use if you're using an SMG. Now there is one other exotic that you could kind of throw on and forget about, which is Dune Marchers. Why Dune Marchers? You get an increased sprint speed, so your mobility, well, that's not tied to your mobility, but your overall mobility is faster. Sprinting builds up static charge after melee attacking an enemy. That charge will chain damage to nearby enemies. If you think about it as Jolt, it works almost in the same manner as Jolt, but it doesn't count as Jolt. Very confusing, but basically just sprint around and you don't have to think about this. If you're just normally like running around with the shotgun and then you shoulder charge something, it is going to basically jolt the target and deal damage to nearby targets. And this thing is getting a nerf next season, but it's something that you wouldn't even have to think about. Like you would think about it less than Antaeus Ward's and less than Peacekeepers. It's just something you could throw on. And the only reason I say not to run Armamentarium is because of Touch of Thunder. It gives you, not only does it jolt targets, it gives an additional grenade charge. So, and you cannot get a third grenade charge. Yes, that would be amazing, but you can't. So really, it is kind of pointless if you're running this. The only other thing you could maybe run in Crucible is like one-eye mask that you wouldn't have to think about. Right, this stuff just happens while you're playing the game. Highlights the target who dares to damage you. Track down and destroy them for an overshield. So it highlights them. It's not very noticeable, but the main thing is when you kill them, if you kill the person that is tracked, whoever damaged you, then you get an overshield. And you don't have to think about it. It just happens in regular gameplay, or even something like AC/DC feedback fence, right? If you take melee hits build energy, being struck by a melee reduces incoming damage and unleashes an energy and a devastating explosion. Now, I don't know how much damage resistance this gives. It can give a pretty decent amount if you're taking a bunch of, like, if you're getting shot a lot, right? But the damage that it basically does in an area around you is actually quite a bit. I think it's as much as a melee. So, you know, it could be useful and you don't have to think about it. It's not like something you have to charge up. It's just something you could use, right? There's a lot of stuff you could use a Titan eat without thinking about it. It just does stuff for you. But I would recommend like at least Towering Barricade, Lightning Aid, Touch of Thunder. Those things are so strong in Crucible that, you know, anything else is kind of a bonus and kind of up to you. And there is the new light builds for Titan. Technically, kind of two builds. One for PvE, and it's kind of an arrangement of what you could run in PvP, because PvP is more of an open book, right? It's kind of up to user's choice, right? But I showed you things that could be effective, that are effective, right? Arc Titan is probably one of the stronger subclasses on Titan. It might change next season with the shoulder charge nerf. It doesn't mean that they won't be good, it's just they might not be as strong. But if you stuck around this long and listened to me ramble about ape and crayon eating Titans, which I am a main of, I want to thank you. And if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions on how to make the build videos better, let me know. And I just want to thank you for your time.